Tainted Grail, the Fall of Avalon has been in early access for 2 years, and the launch day is finally here, May 23rd, 2025. Maybe you've already played the early access, maybe you've never heard of this game before. Today, I'm going to offer my thoughts on the full version of the game as Awakened Realms gave me early access to the full launch. Full disclosure, this game was given to me for free by Awakened Realms, but that will not stop me from talking about the things that I liked, the things that I loved, and the things that could use some work. Tainted Grail, the Fall of Avalon is actually based on a board game that was a Kickstarter in 2018. It was one of the most successful Kickstarters of the year. People loved it so much that they built an RPG video game around it, and honestly, I think it really worked out. This game is an open world dark fantasy RPG that roughly takes you through about 50 to 70 hours of content while progressing you through this story that is written around Arthurian legend. That's right, Camelot, the Knights of the Round Table, King Arthur. These are honestly the best features of this game. The lore is very deep. You play as a protagonist who is broken out of prison by some mysterious stranger, eventually finding yourself having ties to King Arthur. I won't specifically say what they are for sake of spoilers, but you are then set out into the lands of Avalon to restore it. What was once a place of peace and prosperity is now being plagued by the Red Death and this magical essence called the Weirdness. There are many different story options that you have throughout the game, and honestly, I was kind of torn on some of the decisions. The way that they present the story definitely makes you think twice about what you're doing and which side you should actually be working for. As I've kind of already alluded to, the strongest aspect of this game is the rich lore of the world. Awakened Realms has done a fantastic job at creating a narrative that makes you want to learn more about the world. It makes you want to do more of the side quests. And honestly, it's just a very well-written story in my opinion. Again, this is an open world game, so you can kind of take things at your own pace. Now, while I was playing this, there were a couple of quests that I could not actually complete. They were bugged. I did report them as being bugged. Whether or not they will be fixed by the launch date or patched later, I'm not sure. Take that as you will. As far as character creation goes, it's got a pretty decent character creator. I didn't spend quite as much time on it as I would of something like Baldur's Gate or Oblivion or Skyrim, but there's definitely some different options if you're trying to fine-tune your character. I would have preferred the ability to make my guy old. I usually just make old guys for some reason. But the armor, the weapons, things that you unlock along the way definitely create a better sense of the character that you want to play. Now, as far as gameplay goes, my original review of the early access was that the gameplay itself was lackluster. Primarily the combat in the early access was not very exciting to me. It felt like there was a lot of repetitiveness. I will say this time around, it feels like they have added a bit more variety. I spent most of my time this playthrough playing as a magic user. I feel like that definitely changed up my experience from the first time that I played. Even the small things like the sound effects that they added in from the early access went a long way to making it feel like a more engaging combat experience. Another huge portion of the gameplay is crafting. Crafting is a massive part of Tainted Grail. I feel like in other games that this will get compared to, like Oblivion, Skyrim, many of the Elder Scrolls games, crafting is so much more central. Like I can't imagine you playing this game without crafting pretty regularly. I was constantly finding new recipes for meals, for potions that I absolutely needed, especially in the early time of the game. Even as a magic user, I didn't really have any kind of healing spells for quite some time. If you're not necessarily into crafting in these games, this might be a little bit of a setback for you, but honestly, I really enjoyed the fact that I was finding all of this stuff. I mean, you open up a box and find fish and blueberries, and in many other games, I would kind of leave that or just pick that up to sell it. But as soon as I was finding these everywhere I was going, it felt like these things were important to me. So I was gathering them up. It made all of the little things seem a lot more important. One aspect of the gameplay that really threw me off though was just how difficult it really was. I get it, it's a skill issue, I know. But seriously, even at the beginning, I was playing at a medium difficulty and I felt like I was struggling. I was just grinding lower level enemies until I felt like I was comfortable enough to do even a side mission. Eventually, I found some more powerful spells and that definitely seemed to help me coast a little bit more, but I was really shocked at how tough some of the enemies were. That was not something I was expecting. Another difference from the early access is I felt like there was a lot more enemy diversity. Obviously, there's more game to play, but it even felt like the enemies were behaving differently. One of my early criticisms of the early access was that it felt like different creatures were still responding the same ways. It made for a repetitive combat cycle, but honestly, it feels like they did a lot in this area. Fighting any kind of human felt a little bit repetitive. It felt like the enemies were doing some of the same things, but other than that, the designs for the enemies were really impressive. A lot of them felt very creative, not something that you would see in another game. This dark fantasy setting is definitely a really cool one that they've leaned into pretty well. Now, I said this during the early access, and I'll say it again, the art and the scenery is really impressive in this game. The landscapes that you go to, the vastness of all of them, just had me standing around for a minute, just taking it all in. There are a lot of big sets in this game, whether that's broken down castles or massive swords sticking out of the earth. Everything was very big and impressive in a great way. That being said, one of the setbacks were the character models when you were up close to them did not wow me in any kind of way. I'm not one to say the graphics are pretty much everything in a game because I don't believe that's the case, but some of the more up close models were less than impressive. What is this guy? Who's he? But these very different sets and the different parts of Avalon honestly were pretty impressive. I really did enjoy discovering new areas, walking into a new location and saying, oh my gosh, what is that? I literally can't wait to go explore that. Now, as far as bugs go, I'm playing a version that they do expect to patch slightly before the launch, but it should pretty much be a finished product. I didn't really experience many bugs. The one that I kept running into was a lack of dialogue. Now, about halfway through playing this, I did get an email from the development team saying that they were adding in some of the missing dialogue, that they were retiming some of the captions. So I'm anticipating by the time that it hits the stores, these issues will be fixed, but nonetheless, I figured I should mention that. I will also say the game never once crashed out on me. I did have to reload a couple of times because of a visual glitch or something like I would kill an enemy and it wouldn't progress the quest for some reason. Every single time that I saved, I loaded up again. It seemed to fix the issue immediately. Some of the voice acting in the game as well was pretty hit or miss. Arthur is definitely one of the major characters in the game. Pretty obvious. And I loved his voice actor. I thought that they chose a great person for that role, at least in the English version that I was playing in. However, some of the characters definitely had a little less of a wow factor for me, but it was not a deal breaker. Pretty much all of the main characters and all of the cutscenes did a pretty great job as far as the voice acting goes. That being said, in my early access review, I gave the game a 7 out of 10, hoping that they would tweak some of the things like combat and bug fixes, and I would say that they did do a pretty decent amount of that. So if I was looking for a score out of 10, I would probably say at launch, Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon is going to get an 8 out of 10 for me. That being said, it is a great game. I definitely recommend this game, especially if you are into open world RPGs. This is a dark fantasy RPG, and I feel like the story elements are very impressive. And I definitely feel like the development team put a lot of time and effort into the game, and you can see that in the way that the story comes together. Awakened Realms has also said that they are planning mod support for the game, so the modding community out there is something for you to work on. The game also can be played in third person, however, there was a warning at the beginning saying it's not the ideal way to play. I switched back and forth pretty often. I didn't really see many issues with the third person play. And as far as player count goes, this is a single player experience, so there's no multiplayer unless at some point mod support comes in for it. This game is available on PC, Xbox Series S and X, and PlayStation 5. And I think if you give it a try, you will be thoroughly impressed with what Awakened Realms has created. Here at the Lumberjack Gaming Channel, we are all about building a community of gamers that want to support each other, that want to uplift each other. If that sounds like something that you want to be a part of, make sure to hit that subscribe button. I'm also in the middle of a huge rebrand. I'm hoping to bring more people onto the team, completely update the way that we're doing content. I'm really excited. I've been working a lot on it. It may not seem like I've been updating as much, but I'm really hoping to launch all of that full force in the next month or so. I love you guys, appreciate you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.